For the first time since 1948, the British Grand Prix moved away from the rolling countryside of Buckinghamshire. Instead, it found a new home in the industrial heartland of northwest England on the Aintree circuit, just outside the bustling port city of Liverpool. The change in scenery added a unique character to this year's race, setting the stage for an intense battle on this relatively new track. Following the devastating events at the 24 Hours of Le Mans in mid-June, numerous automobile clubs around the world began to reconsider the safety of continuing motorsport events in their respective countries. The first major casualty of these concerns was the French Grand Prix, which was cancelled, leaving the British Grand Prix as the next stage in the championship. This unexpected break stretched the gap between the races to nearly a month. However, the teams used this time wisely, fine-tuning their cars and sharpening their strategies for the prestigious British round, which, as always, drew a large and competitive field of participants. With Daimler-Benz riding a wave of recent victories, all eyes were on the German team as they arrived at Aintree, especially among British fans eager to see their countryman Stirling Moss take the win. The local crowd's hopes were high for a home victory, but Moss wasn't the only formidable name in the Mercedes lineup. Unlike the previous two Grand Prix, this time Moss was joined not just by Juan Manuel Fangio and Carl Kling, but also by the seasoned Italian Piero Taruffi. The veteran driver had recently inked a deal with team boss Alfred Neubauer, securing his place in the squad for the remainder of the season. With such a strong lineup, expectations were sky high for the Silver Arrows once again. Ferrari arrived at Aintree with three of their trusty Tipo 625 machines, the same model that had carried Maurice Trintignant to victory in Monaco. The team felt that Aintree's tighter, slower layout wouldn't play to the strengths of their shorter, more agile Tipo 555 Super Squalo, which was better suited to high-speed tracks like Spa. The driver lineup remained unchanged from the Dutch Grand Prix, with Mike Hawthorn, Maurice Trintignant, and Eugenio Castellotti behind the wheel. Of the trio, Hawthorn was Ferrari's best bet for success, as he had the advantage of having raced at Aintree before and knew the circuit well. Familiar with the Aintree circuit from past experiences, the Maserati team arrived well prepared and confident. They brought 4 cars, all featuring unlouvered bodywork and large port cylinder heads, maximizing performance for the unique demands of the track. Their driver lineup included the skilled Jean Bera, Luigi Musso, and Roberto Mieres, with a last-minute change seeing André Simon stepping in to replace Cesare Perdisa. Maserati's controlled approach hinted at a strong showing on race day. Meanwhile, making a return to the World Championship for the first time since 1953, the Cooper team lined up with a fresh face behind the wheel, Australian newcomer Jack Brabham. This marked Brabham's debut on the grand stage, as Cooper sought to make their presence felt once again in Formula One competition. As the 1955 British Grand Prix approaches, excitement fills the air, particularly for the debut of Connaught Racing's new machine, the Type B. Originally intended to house a rear-mounted Coventry Climax V8 engine known as the Godiva, challenges in development led Connaught to pivot, creating a conventionally arranged B-type powered by an Alta engine, specially developed to fit the 2.5-litre specification. Under its sleek exterior, a lightweight double overhead cam, 2.5-litre Alta 4-cylinder engine delivered a remarkable 240 brake horsepower. This formidable power, coupled with disc brakes all around, provided the drivers with the confidence they needed to push the car to its limits. The Type B was evidently a superb race car, featuring independent front suspension and a de Dion rear suspension. The first iterations of this remarkable machine were constructed with all-enveloping aerodynamic bodywork, but the team later opted for a more conventional design. In 1955, driving a Connaught in this form, Tony Brooks scored the first win in a Grand Prix by a British driver in a British car since 1923 in a non-World Championship race at Syracuse.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 8th running of the RAC British Grand Prix here at the Aintree Circuit. What a spectacular day we have for racing. Clear skies, perfect weather, and an electric atmosphere with a crowd of nearly 95,000 strong, all eager to witness the action.
With Aintree being unfamiliar territory for most of the drivers, qualifying became an intense scramble from the very start. Yet, it was the Silver Arrows that dominated once again, locking out 4 of the top 5 spots on the grid. To the delight of the home crowd, it was Stirling Moss who shone brightest, securing his first ever pole position. He edged out his legendary teammate, Juan Manuel Fangio, by a fraction. John Behra, flying the flag for Maserati, was the only one able to challenge the German juggernaut. With prior experience on the track, he managed to squeeze into third, splitting the Mercedes duo and keeping the fight interesting for race day. The Ferrari drivers struggled throughout qualifying, unable to keep pace with the dominant Mercedes and Maserati teams. Despite their best efforts, they could only manage 10th, 12th, and 13th positions on the grid, with Eugenio Castellotti leading the trio. Their performances were well off the mark, a clear sign of the challenge they faced heading into the race. The biggest disappointments of the session were Peter Collins and Jack Brabham. Collins, hindered by technical issues, could only complete a handful of laps in his Maserati, while Brabham's Cooper, hastily prepared for the event, suffered from clutch failure. The Australian managed just one installation lap, leaving both drivers to occupy the last 2 positions on the grid. Connaught's fastest driver was Tony Rolt, who took 14th place, but he already lost the pole position time for more than 6 seconds. Race day dawns with perfect weather, and just before the main event, the drivers climb into identical Austin Healey sports cars for a ceremonial lap of honor around the circuit. As the cavalcade makes its way through the track, the enthusiastic crowd cheers wildly, but the loudest applause is reserved for the homegrown hero Stirling Moss.
From Argentina, Juan Manuel Fangio, also in a Mercedes, clocking in just 2
The drivers will tackle 90 laps around the circuit, covering a total distance of 434 kilometers throughout the race.
Hold on to your hats, ladies and gentlemen. The engines are roaring, the tension is building, and we are moments away from the start of what promises to be an unforgettable British Grand Prix here at Aintree.
As the race begins, Fangio and Moss launch off the line in perfect synchrony. But to the dismay of the cheering crowd, it's the Argentine who sweeps into the first turn ahead of them all. Amidst the intense action, Peter Collins and Roy Salvadori emerge as the surprise stars of the start. On the following lap, Carl Kling and Piero Taruffi engage in a tactical battle, skillfully maneuvering past Roberto Mieres, one after the other. Their seamless teamwork forces the talented Argentine down to 6th place. By lap 3, Stirling Moss, having meticulously bided his time behind Juan Manuel Fangio, finally makes his move. He launches an all-out attack at the finish line, skillfully slipping past the Argentine and sending the crowd into a roaring frenzy. Not to be outdone, Roberto Mieres responds with his own counterattack, expertly navigating his Maserati to overtake both Carl Kling and Piero Taruffi in swift succession. The Argentine's daring maneuvers add to the excitement, showcasing the intense battle for supremacy unfolding on the track. Kling quickly retaliates against Mieres, launching a fierce counterattack. The German driver deftly maneuvers his Mercedes around the Argentine, reclaiming his position and pushing Mieres back once more. On lap 6, after executing a brilliant overtake on Fangio, Moss ramps up the intensity, pushing his Mercedes to its limits. Despite his best efforts to pull away, the Argentine remains hot on his heels, refusing to let Moss create any significant gap. The tension is palpable as the two drivers remain locked in a relentless duel. By lap 10, disaster strikes for John Behra, as thick smoke begins to billow from beneath the hood of his Maserati. In disbelief, he zips past his pit crew, only to find himself forced to stop at the first corner, the race slipping away from him. Berra had been putting in a stellar performance, seemingly destined for a podium finish, but the rupture of his oil pipeline has dashed those dreams. On the next lap, Luigi Musso makes his move, launching an aggressive attack on Piero Taruffi as they jostle for 5th place. The Italian driver skillfully slips past his rival. Peter Collins launches a spirited attack on his fellow Brit, Mike Hawthorne, surging ahead to claim 7th place. On lap 18, Juan Manuel Fangio, having patiently stalked Stirling Moss for several laps, seizes his moment to strike. With a burst of speed, he launches an audacious attack, powering past the Englishman to reclaim the lead. The crowd erupts as the Argentine legend demonstrates his tactical prowess and raw speed, putting him back in command of the race. Piero Taruffi finally finds his moment to shine, executing a perfectly timed maneuver to overtake Luigi Musso's Maserati. Misfortune befalls Connaught as Tony Rolt rolls into the pits, battling a malfunctioning accelerator link. Despite the crew's best efforts, the ongoing accelerator troubles ultimately lead to Rolt's withdrawal from the race, marking a frustrating end to their debut. Even with the two leading Mercedes drivers having exchanged positions, Fangio is unable to shake off his teammate Moss, who remains hot on his tail. The gap between them hovers at a mere second, intensifying the battle for supremacy as both drivers push their machines to the limit. Harry Schell was having an impressive race, closing in on Collins and looking poised to make a move. However, disaster struck when the accelerator pedal beneath his foot suddenly crumbled to pieces. With no way to maintain control, the American had no choice but to pull his car to the side of the track, ending a promising outing in heartbreak. On lap 26, Stirling Moss strikes once more, launching a bold attack that catapults him into the lead. The crowd erupts in a frenzy, their cheers echoing through the stands as an Englishman claims the front position in the British Grand Prix. By lap 30, disaster strikes for Peter Collins as the clutch on his Maserati fails, forcing him to dive into the pits and effectively ending his race. It's a heartbreaking turn of events, especially after the Englishman showcased an impressive performance, clawing his way up from the back of the field to secure 7th place. By lap 31, it's game over for the young Australian, Jack Brabham. The engine on his Cooper suddenly loses power, forcing him to reluctantly steer into the pits. The dreams of a competitive debut come crashing down, leaving Brabham out of the race and fans disappointed. It's a tough break for the talented driver, who had been eager to make his mark on this prestigious stage. The battle between Taruffi and Musso rages on. Musso pushes hard, overtaking Taruffi with a smooth maneuver. By lap 48, the relentless pursuit begins to take its toll on Mira's Maserati. The engine, pushed to its limits in the chase against the dominant Mercedes drivers, finally gives way, forcing the talented Argentine to retire from the race. This premature exit not only dashes his hopes of clinching a podium finish, but also underscores the fierce competition of the day, leaving fans to wonder what might have been for Miras in this high-stakes battle. With Mira's retirement, Mercedes finds itself without its last serious competitor, prompting team principal Neubauer to issue a tactical directive. He instructs Moss, Fangio and Kling to maintain their positions and consolidate their lead. Meanwhile, the atmosphere shifts for Taruffi, who receives the signal to ramp up his pace and mount a renewed assault on Musso. After slipping past Fangio, Moss begins to stretch his legs, gradually increasing his lead over the Argentine. With each passing lap, the gap widens, reaching an impressive 4 seconds as he finds his rhythm on the Aintree circuit. The crowd roars with excitement, rallying behind their local hero as he inches closer to a historic victory. The young British prodigy made his mark during last season while driving for Maserati. His exceptional talent was evident as he regularly fought for podium finishes and nearly clinched victory at the Italian Grand Prix. However, repeated mechanical issues dashed his hopes, leaving him no higher than 10th in the championship standings. Despite these setbacks, Moss's exceptional skills caught the eye of the legendary Alfred Neubauer, who welcomed him into the Mercedes team for the current season. Armed with the formidable Mercedes W196, known for its blistering speed and reliability, Moss is now in an ideal position to secure his long-awaited first Grand Prix win. Expectations are high, and the fans are eagerly waiting to see if he can finally turn his potential into a triumph this season. After a relentless pursuit, Taruffi finally finds the opportunity to slip past Musso, positioning himself ahead of the Maserati driver. This remarkable maneuver means that all 4 Mercedes cars now occupy the top spots in the race, showcasing the dominance of the German team. Trintignant's Ferrari begins to suffer from overheating issues, prompting the Frenchman to make a pit stop. The team swiftly replaces the spark plugs, hoping to salvage the situation. However, upon further inspection, they discover that the cylinder head is also damaged, leaving Trintignant with no choice but to retire from the race, his hopes for a strong finish dashed. In the closing laps, Fangio ramps up his speed, narrowing the gap to Moss to a mere 1.5 seconds. The tension builds as the crowd, buzzing with excitement and anticipation for their local hero's victory, begins to speculate whether team tactics will come into play on the final lap, just as they did in the Netherlands. Will Neubauer instruct his drivers to follow the same strategy, or will they race to the finish line with unrestrained rivalry? The air is thick with suspense as the race approaches its thrilling conclusion. As they entered the final lap, Fangio trailed closely behind Moss, expertly navigating the slipstream in a bid to seize victory. In a nail-biting climax, he pulls out of the slipstream at the last corner, matching the Englishman stride for stride as they race toward the finish line. However, in a thrilling finish, Moss manages to inch ahead, crossing the line just a body length in front of Fangio. This remarkable victory not only marks Stirling Moss's first triumph in the World Championship, but also makes him the first Briton to claim victory at his home Grand Prix, igniting wild celebrations among the fans. In the aftermath, as he accepts the accolades, Stirling graciously acknowledges Fangio's prowess, declaring him the best driver in the world. He also extends heartfelt thanks to his team, whose support was crucial in securing today's win. Fangio, in turn, reciprocates the respect, recognizing that his teammate was simply faster today and that Moss thoroughly deserved the victory. It's a moment that showcases not only fierce competition, but also mutual admiration between two of the sport's greatest talents. The 1955 British Grand Prix marked a monumental moment in Formula One history. For Juan Manuel Fangio, it was a race that would solidify his place as the first ever 3-time world champion, a feat never before achieved in the sport. At GrandPrixTV, we firmly believe this championship victory was one of the finest, a perfect showcase of Fangio's brilliance, both as a driver and as a strategist. Fangio's performance that day was nothing short of masterful. It wasn't just about raw speed, though he had plenty of that. It was about the execution of a flawless plan. Throughout the race, Fangio drove with a calm precision, following close behind his teammate Stirling Moss in what appeared to be a controlled and calculated move. Moss was on the verge of his first ever Grand Prix victory, and Fangio, who had already secured his championship title, seemed to ride the wave behind the young Brit, not pressuring him, but rather allowing him the space to shine in front of his home crowd. While the Argentine legend remained right there beside him, side by side, in one of the most iconic finishes in motorsport history. The image of the two Mercedes W196 roaring across the line in perfect unison is a lasting memory from that day. Fangio, the newly crowned champion, and Moss, the rising star, both celebrated together. In the final standings, Kling and Taruffi secure a remarkable third and fourth place for Mercedes, marking the team's best finish in its illustrious history. Maserati, the only team that posed a challenge to the mighty Silver Arrows today, manages to claim a consolation prize with Musso finishing in fifth place, earning the team 2 valuable championship points. As the 1955 Formula One season races toward its dramatic conclusion, all eyes turn to Monza, the iconic temple of speed. The Italian Grand Prix promises high-stakes action, where Mercedes will seek to cement their dominance. Fangio, already crowned champion, looks to cap off an extraordinary season, while Stirling Moss, fresh off his historic first victory, aims to build on his momentum. Ferrari, on home soil, will fight fiercely to regain their pride, and with the legendary oval making its return, the final race of the year will be nothing short of a showdown. The stage is set for a thrilling climax.